All right, give me 1 second while I double check the audio and make sure it's running. All right, let's test the audio. All right, let's test the audio. All right, we're running well. Give me 1 second as I settle in here. Welcome into the Green Low Screen Podcast, episode 4. I'm your host, SR, founder of the SR51 Media Empire, the 51 Dynasties community, and the Green Low Screen Podcast. We're going to be trying something new with the podcast, and what we're going to be trying is one topic. I have decided that it's kind of unfair to make everybody sit through a 2 or 3 hour thing where you're going over multiple topics, and um, in a way, you're forcing everyone to listen to multiple topics when they may be interested in just one, or maybe they want to skip to the next one. So, first thing out the bat, to at least, you know, give an opinion, which I think is valid and should be given to anybody that was wondering. Yes, I did see the requirements that have been handed down by YouTube for monetization. I'm not gonna lie and say it didn't give me pause. It didn't. I'm not gonna lie and say it didn't give me a thought of, hey, is this the best place for my podcast and gameplay and stuff like that? And to be honest, it really showed me that, instead of being upset that YouTube has increased its requirements, it showed me that, hey, um, having the opportunity to be able to basically bring ads back to the website is better to do that than to say, okay, I'm going to essentially walk away. I think it's unfair to the over 5,000 people that have been, you know, which I greatly appreciate. And I put a post out earlier today before I got busy as far as what I was doing in the day. I greatly appreciate everyone that has joined the community over here on YouTube. And I think it's best that, you continue to put out content. If you do have an opportunity to be able to put ads on the website, and from what I can tell, the whole payout system is typically the same way with commercials. I mean, that's what I'm gonna start calling them. Is basically commercials. Um, Myself personally, this channel is not monetized, meaning that basically, this channel is able to be subscribed to, but the ads that roll, there's no cut that comes my way from that. As far as the ads that run on the website, that is something where when someone clicks on an ad or follows an ad or watches a commercial, I do receive some portion of that. And I think that's the best option, frankly. I think that it gives me the opportunity to continue making the great content that I've been doing over here on YouTube, as well as doing the podcast, but also putting myself in a position to, receive income. I think that one of the main things that people get misconstrued about game streaming is that there's a difference between making content to make money and being in a position to receive money. And that's where we are. If you go to the website, which is completely free, just because there are ads there does not mean that you have to pay a price. The ads will be returning. What today is Wednesday? They will be 9 times out of 10, I guess, returning by no later than Monday. I put that day out there a little bit further out so that way, excuse me, I put that day out there as a little bit further out so that way it gives me a little bit of time to be able to do it. It shouldn't take that long, but it's kind of like when you say, "Hey, I want to order something," and they say it could take this long for it to receive to you. You know. At the same time, like I said, today's podcast will focus on just one topic. It may span into a lot of different games and a lot of different, genres and years of gaming, but it will revolve around mainly the gaming industry. One of the main reasons I wanted to do it was because of the fact that I have an upcoming dentist appointment, and I'm not sure how that's going to go. Not in a bad way or nothing, but I don't expect anything bad. But sometimes you can, go into a dentist and they pull something or clean something or something like that, and it takes away your ability to be able to talk, further extended times, like basically what I'm doing right now. So I chose it to be best to roll out a podcast today. So that way, if I'm too tired or if I am too busy, or maybe I'm just in a position where my jaw hurts, and I can't um, stream, at least I put, the podcast out ahead of time and something for you to know, hey, kept the schedule, new podcast for the week. And I could think of no topic better than to comment on, in my opinion, than the gaming industry. And speaking as a person as honest as I can be, but at the same time as upfront as I can be about a hobby of mine, but at the same time a business. It has matured into. Don't get me wrong, I never really pass costs. You know how they say, "Oh, you don't pass the cost on to the customer." To give you an example of that, what that means is like kind of what we're doing now. Okay, where basically ads are something that are there, but they are not something that drives certain articles. Like the website does not exist based upon clicks. It's not one of those things where I need a certain amount of people to click on the website to keep it going. The ads are pasted there to basically put us in a situation where, as a empire, we're receiving income, but we're not, solely based around income itself. Now, when it comes to the game industry, myself, spoiler alert, there will be certain aspects of things like, say, games and hardware that I speak bluntly about. It's basically me just being upfront. Um, I will always say spoiler alert before I say anything about a game that maybe you haven't played or a piece of product that you haven't gotten yet. But I'm gonna be pretty honest about some things. Um, Myself personally, I have seen the gaming industry grow from infancy in a way. I can't say complete start because really the only thing that predates me is more so the Atari and the I want to say there was another system there. I mean, it's before my time, but basically, it's the Atari and a couple. I mean, one or two other systems, maybe. Excuse me. The Atari and maybe one or two other systems that really predate me as a gamer. And the thing about it is, I've learned that what makes it great is seeing the evolution. It's kind of like when you take something like, say, Pokemon, right? And you see, which is some of the tattoos I have, and you see stuff like Charmander start from Charmander and then turn into Charmeleon and then turn into Charizard and things like that. And it's like the evolution of the story, just, like in Dragon Ball Z, where a character goes from, Kaioken instinct and then you look at where they are now with, Super Saiyan gods and things like that, and you're like, wow, look at how far they've come. Like look at how much they've grown. Look at how much they've evolved as characters and things like that. And I think that in a way, when it has to do with the gaming industry, we lose sight of that sometimes. And some of the things we're going to speak on is things that I don't think people are taking into account, right? I think one of the first things to start out would be platforms. Okay. I think that myself personally, looking at the Xbox platform, because that's the platform that I choose over any other. Um, I've seen their evolution. I remember when the Xbox was more of a, I don't want to say third brand in people's minds, but it was more of like a, Nintendo had Pokemon and PlayStation had, at the time, I could say the main thing that kind of stuck out for them was like, when I was younger, was more of the God of War and the Uncharted and things like that. Xbox found its way with Halo and Gears of War and games like that and Forza and things. Um, that's not why I play Xbox. And I know that may be a shocker to a lot of people that are assuming that, hey, this is why everybody plays Xbox. It's for, Halo, Gears, and Forza. Myself personally, that is not why I own the box. It's why I got into it, but it has matured into so many other things. And let me say this too: not everything I agree with that comes from Xbox, and I will speak on that as well. I don't think there's enough speaking on what you don't like. Nothing is perfect. We all fall short of the glory, and at the same time, there are some things that PlayStation does that Xbox doesn't. There's some things Xbox does. Excuse me. There's some things that Nintendo does that Xbox doesn't. Um, Myself personally, one of the faults that I think Xbox makes is not capitalizing on specific characters that could drive certain categories. Take for instance, um, Power World. Okay, um, Power World's a great game. Okay, I think Power World is probably the biggest competitor I have ever seen stand toe to toe with Pokemon. Okay. Um, the little bit I played, I know a lot of people compare it to Pokemon. And I think that the reason why they get those comparisons is because it involves animals, pals, and throw a ball and you capture them, and everything's inspired by something. It's kind of hard nowadays to do something completely from fresh. But in my opinion, if and this is no slight at Asha Sharma or Matt Booty or Aaron Greenberg or even Phil Spencer or anybody that's had control, I don't care how much it would have took. I would have bought Power. Okay, I would have. As soon as that game was even mentioned to be something, I would have climbed on the phone, had a conversation with the guys that own that game, and said, "How much will it take? If not to buy you out, how much will it take for you to merge with us?" Because that is something that has been missing from gaming for a long period of time is a Pokemon like game. I understand that there was a lot of, legal sides to it, a lot of like, I mean, I'm not even sure if they finished the whole legal battle with Pokemon, but you know, when I look at that game and I see like prime example, right? I was playing one day and I captured this what looks to be Firefox style character. I forget the name, but I captured this Firefox style character, and all I had was a stick because that's how the game starts. You don't start with stores that you can go to and pre-built pals or anything. You have to start from fresh. So what happened was I'm wandering around the map and I see this camp, right, and it had like a pirate flag out front and had a couple guys with guns. Now, all the way up to this point, I was able to walk up on any sort of encampment. I had even had conversations with people that had firearms and things like that, and everything was fine. But for whatever reason, when I walked up on this camp, they opened fire. They shot me down. And the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, all my gear, because that's one of the great things, like I say, I like about Power World is all the gear that they had, you know, that I had at the time was left at their doorstep. So the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, I got to at least try to run back over there, get my gear, and get up out of there, right? So again, they opened fire again the second time around once I reloaded and came back in. And my pal basically turns into a fighter, basically, and starts laying them down, right? And I'm watching him like lay down guy after guy after guy after guy. And I'm like, okay, I didn't see that coming, right? Then I open this cage to what looks like a whale character, and this whale character becomes one of my companions. And I thought to myself, I was like, this is a mechanic that I know a lot of people say they want something like that with Pokemon. But if I had to be real, I think Nintendo has really cemented themselves as a very, how can I say this politely? They have cemented themselves as a very family friendly system, you know, something along the lines of basically everything being family friendly. I was not surprised when Grand Theft Auto was not announced for their system, and I understood. They can't run the risk of a game like that being shown next to other games that most people have come to understand from them. Um, Myself personally, what cemented me further in Xbox, because I'm not gonna, talk solely about 20 years ago or anything like that. I may reference it, but I'm gonna try to keep it more current. Um, my love of Halo is, hey, I like Halo the series. I love Halo the series. Everyone that's come out, I've played and liked. But the reason why Halo 5 stands out to me as my favorite Halo is not because of the characters being, African American in a sense. It's mainly because of the fact that it was something new. And prime example, just as an example, I bumped into a fellow gamer today. A lot of times people have to understand that things like tattoos and especially tattoos, tattoos speak for you. And one of the tattoos I have is the Halo Energy Sword. I feel as though it's my favorite weapon in the game. I think pulling an energy sword in a multiplayer game is like just watching everybody scramble. When you see that energy sword come out, it's time to run away until if you don't have one, it's time to run away until it runs out. And I never really was, attracted to the firearm side of things or the, rifles or the handguns or anything. I always liked the energy sword. And with Halo 5, I remember listening to, I forget what the name of the podcast was, but there was this podcast where every week they would drop an episode of, I think it was either every week or I can't remember if it all came out at once or they did episode by episode, but it was this podcast where they told the story of why Master Chief was being hunted and what was going on in the universe around him. Like how, um, people were hunting him and how he had been labeled a traitor and, it had never been done in a sense. And I know that for some, you know, Master Chief is the end all be all of Halo. He is the character that everyone's like, hey, it has to be centered around him and it has to be only about him. One of the things that I mentioned to the person I bumped into today when they commented on my Halo sword tattoo, when they asked me, that new one looks good. And I said, yeah, it looks good. But myself personally, I would prefer a open world, fully customizable Halo. And he asked, do you think it'll run well? And I'm like, well, When you look at the hardware today, set aside the 20 something years ago comment, right? When you look at the hardware of today, a lot of it is really overpowered. I think that they pressed forward, and in a way, I think they expected 8K and things like that to become the standard. I don't think they expected, because I'm gonna tell you right now, one of my favorite movies and what drives me to make some of the decisions I'm making in gaming is Ready Player One. And I know that, everybody has their opinions on movies. I comment on, movies, and I comment on gaming, arts and entertainment, and sports. As far as arts and entertainment goes, Ready Player One shows you not only where we're going to be, but where we are now. Um, the whole everybody's always online. I think a lot of people got caught up in the whole, goggles thing and figured, well, that's not realistic. In a way, it is, because you're either on social media or you're either on TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, IG, what else is there? X, or you're watching Twitch, or you're watching Kick, or you're watching TikTok, you're watching YouTube. You're in that world. So we're all more connected now than we have ever been. Okay. But when it comes to the gaming world side of things, I mean, you could literally launch a game, and think about this. You could launch a game and just go to a random section to play with others and have a game with, if it's four other people that have to join, three or four of those people can be all around the world, just random. You don't even have to know them. You could just hit matchmake and they'll just, launch you up with people all around the world. And I think that's an amazing feat. I think it's something that no one saw coming. But I think the shadow game that that's taken over the world slowly is handheld gaming. And I think that that is being under talked about a little bit. I think there are a lot of people, I've heard people, fellow content creators, in podcasts and things like that go, well, nobody wants to play on a handheld, I want to have my feet up and um, I want to play my games on a big TV. Well, if you didn't know, they make a thing called AR glasses. I'm currently, I want to say I'm about 85 to 90% sure I'm going to get me a pair. And the reason why I want to do that is because the evolution of gaming. To be honest, I started out on handhelds. I had no problem dating myself. I'll be 40 soon and things like that. It's been an amazing ride. There's nothing wrong health wise or nothing. But you think about, where you've come from when you're coming. I think everybody that's coming up on any birthday in a sense thinks, okay, how far I've come. And I remember the excitement that you would get from being able to pack up a Game Boy, or being able to pack up a Game Gear, or being able to pack up a PSP. And, living in the greater Northwest now, but growing up in Philly and in Jersey and, things like that, and visiting New York's and the Baltimore's, a lot of times having those games with you gave you the power to continue the story. One of the tats I have is, I'm a gamer, I've lived 1,000 lives. That's not a terminology that I came up with. That's something that became popular in the gaming world. And it's true. A lot of times I catch myself being like prime example, right? And in terminology like that, I've lived 1,000 lives means you want to live a new life every time. You don't, not to say you don't want to revisit old games, but if you've beaten them, I mean, completely beat the hell out of them, you know, it's kind of hard to say, hey, I'm going to go back to the beginning and start again. Like, prime example, I put a post out about going back to play Ghost Recon Wildlands, right? Now, One second. I read them back. So speaking on, with the Halo thing, Halo 5 felt like it was like kind of like a prize fight, right? Like, how they do the lead ups to a fight, right? Like, I'm a big fan of wrestling, right? I haven't really been keeping up on um I haven't been keeping up on everything that's been going on lately. I mean, I've been keeping up on like Twitter and stuff and X, whichever one you want to call it here, but I haven't been keeping up on every episode. But I used that as an example where the wrestling, some of the best parts about wrestling is the part where the pay per view, let's say the pay per view is the last Sunday of the month, right? Every week they will come out and have like a lead up, you know, like maybe one of the guys in the match comes out and cuts a promo. He has a match that night, and then you get to see him wrestle, but you think to your mind, damn, is he gonna beat, like, prime example, take I don't know, just using people as an example back in the day. Take because a lot of times they didn't really put the main character versus the main character. They would do something like the Undertaker versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? And Stone Cold Steve Austin would come out one week and proclaim that, he gonna walk a mud hole in Undertaker's ass and walk it dry, and then he would have a match, and then the next week, the Undertaker would come out and say how he's gonna rest in peace, and then he would have a match, and then let's say the next week they would, the last week of the month before they got to the pay per view, they would get into some sort of skirmish. They gets broken up, and it's just like, man, we gotta watch the pay per view. We gotta see who wins. How does this go down? How, if they do win, and you can never really predict it. You can never really, That's one of the things that I think also was lost with wrestling a bit, where you didn't know who was gonna win, because typically back then, when you won the belt, you held the belt for a long period of time. Like most of the times, it was like a person did not drop the belt, 9 days later. Like that was more of like a joke, you know. It was more like you became the champ, you were the champ for 6 to 8 months. If you dropped the belt before WrestleMania, that was a little shocker, But like now, the reason why I bring that up is because Agent Lock to me was a mistake in how they handled it. I feel as though that even if you didn't want to continue exactly with Agent Lock, I feel as though that was a door that was open that was shut too fast. Um, from what I can tell, Halo 5 was not really super received like that on the PlayStation, and from what I can tell, I don't know how much it was received on the Xbox. And I think that's because there's two separate camps here. There's the camp of people that are like, well, Halo 3, 1 through 3 was amazing and everything else was not good. And then there's the people like myself that are like, and I'll proclaim and say it, I feel as though Halo 5, if I had to be honest, I feel like Halo 5, I don't want to proclaim it as the best all time Halo in the series, because I know a lot of people would feel completely different. But to me, it's my favorite because of it brought something different. It started to be, I think we're starting to get to a point where when you don't want to try something new, you revert to the past. Like it's like, okay, Master Chief, the last story with Halo Infinite, I didn't even play Halo Infinite, to be honest. Not because I didn't like it, but because it felt like the same thing. There's some massive villain that has arisen. The only person who can take him out is Chief. We wake Chief up. He beats the hell out of him. He goes back to sleep. Whereas Halo 5, he was a criminal. Like I forget what he actually was like. I can't remember whether it was a lie or I haven't played the story in so long that I can't really remember what was the actual reason of why he was labeled a criminal. But like just hearing that, there were people. Shout out to the people I work with, at the time, and people that I was around, fellow content creators that are still active to this day. I used to play. There was like one point where, because we used to when we worked, we had tables and stuff, and I used to set up my podcast to be able to listen to that week's Halo episode. And they came past one time. I was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's the story of Halo 5 where Master Chief's a criminal." And somebody said, "What do you mean, Master?" I remember an older guy at the time. I'm in my like 30s, and shout out to him. Everybody knows who they are if they were to hear this. Um, he was in his, I think, maybe like 50s, right? And he knew who Chief was. And he was like, "What? Master Chief's not a criminal. Master Chief is such. Turn that up. I gotta hear what's going on." And just that aspect right there of Master Chief being different than what he has been for the past over 20 years was enough to get somebody 2 times my age to be interested in just the story alone, right? But when you repeat and in a way beat a dead horse time and time again, I'm one of those people that I will say certain things to basically not to be different, but to give my honest opinion. Let's just take a trip down imaginary lane for a minute. Okay. Take a game like two game franchises that I think under, and I'm gonna give it to you under one franchise that makes these games. Take the Division 2 and Assassin's Creed, right? And imagine what a game like that would be like, even if you decided to add in Ghost Recon's Wild. Let's make it three games: Ghost Recon Wildlands, The Division 2, and Assassin's Creed. Any Assassin's Creed you feel as though you like. Now imagine you get dropped into a massive open world. Now you can't fly, you can't leave the planet or anything like that, but there's like hella loot, like the type of stuff where there's just loot everywhere. And you start off as this low level Spartan, you don't you're not Master Chief. Okay. If you can, you can take your helmet off. But even if they don't want to add in faces, right? Let's just say, because a lot of times first games are typically like test games in a sense for the industry. And let's say, you have just a standard Spartan suit. I don't know, maybe you, story wise, you get dropped on this planet because your ship crashed and you have to survive the world waiting for backup. Or let's say it's you and two or three other Spartans and you all start off with low level gear. But as you progress, you earn suits, you earn weapons, you earn vehicles. And then, even if it is live service, every couple of months they pump in, you know, new loot and new gameplay. And at the same time, let's say that there is a story. To me, I feel like something like that is a risk, yes. But I think that just like Fallout was able to create Fallout 76, just like Elder Scrolls was able to create Elder Scrolls Online, and just like GTA was able to create GTA Online, there is a market for something like that. But the problem is they're unsure. No one asks for it, but they complain when they get the same game. It's like I've probably had like hundreds of tweets where I'm like, please give me an open world, fully customizable Halo, right? Think about it. You have an armor set. Let's say to start off, there's at least 100 armor sets that you can earn in the game. There's 30 rifles and 30 handguns and a Halo sword. I mean, excuse me, a Halo sword, an energy sword with different colors, right? 4 or 5 different colors. That's a good starter. You gotta understand with every game that comes out, there's always gonna be people that run it for 48 hours and claim that they've done everything. And one of the things to me that is missing from Halo is a story that does not revolve around Master Chief, you know? And that is a fault, I think, of Xbox, but I understand why. It's kind of like old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think that they take that approach with Halo because they're scared. Not like scared, like, talking bad about them as persons, but I think they're afraid that if they were to go in a different direction, that they could lose the audience. But in my eyes, I feel as though they've already lost it. Because if they didn't, Halo right now would be beating the hell out of any other game that came out, and it didn't. And to me, even if the next Halo is on the way, if it's the same story again, it's nothing new. It's kind of like, take for instance, eating dinner, right? If every night, I saw a meme one time from this couple I watched. I watched a lot of couples, being married almost, being together with my wife 15 years and being married 13 and stuff. Greatest decision I ever made in my life. Shout out to my wife. Um, I saw this meme where this guy was like, he was smiling and he was like, your wife made spaghetti for dinner, right? He's smiling and she puts it on a plate. And then the next day she does it again and he's smiling a little bit, but not as much. And then the third day he's like, just looking as she puts it on the plate. Then the fourth day he literally gets up and walks away, right? That's kind of the approach that I feel people are taking with something like Halo, where you're splitting the audience when you really could bring us all together. Like when I told that fellow gamer, hey, I would love a fully customizable, Halo world where you are the Spartan, you are the story. His only question was, do you think it would run well? Do you think it would run? And I'm like, when you look at some of these games, man, when you look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, when you look at Ghost Recon Wildlands, when you look at, in a way, what GTA is, how couldn't it? Look at Starfield. Even if you had to go to Todd McFarlane's camp and ask them, hey, how did y'all do that? you know, how did you make a space story that never ends? A lot of people see things like, Starfield and because I do own a tattoo from Starfield as well. Starfield to me epitomizes the evolution of Xbox. I think that Xbox started out with Halo, Gears, and Forza and evolved into Starfield, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Minecraft, Sea of Thieves, and things like that. Um, Myself personally, I'm not saying that it's a bad franchise because I think that's one thing we need to understand too, that just for something else to be good doesn't mean the other thing has to be bad. It just could be at a point where a lot of us can call it ahead of time. Like prime example, take the Blade game, right? I've been saying probably for since I've heard of that movie, the best Blade for now and will always be Wesley Snipes. You have to understand, Wesley Snipes has been Passenger 57. He has been Phoenix in the Demolition movies. He has been Nino and New Jack City. You see what I'm saying? This guy is probably one of the most decorated. Like, if they had to talk about service of, how they, some people say, what's the name of that there? Service, like rep. First of all, this man got all the rep. He has shown his versatility as an actor so much. Where if you were to doubt his ability to act, you have lost your mind. Okay. Hold on one second as I subscribe to this person. Hopefully I can do it here without having to. One second. All right, I'm back. I like supporting other content creators that play games that I like. So yeah, think about this: Passenger 57, Nino Brown, Phoenix from Demolition Man, Phoenix. You know, what else am I missing here? Even before this is long before Blade. You know, there would be no Marvel universe if there was no Wesley Snipes and Blade. He was before Iron Man. He was before Spider Man. Hell, he was around the time of Spawn, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the game isn't going to be good because I don't know if that game is canceled. But I do feel as though the mistake that is being made by them is the need and the want to only do Marvel games. Now, look, I'll tell you like this. I understand with every step forward, DC takes 10 steps back because I do think they had a good thing going with the DC Justice League. I think they had a very good Spider Man Flash. I think they had a very good Wonder Woman. I think they had a very good Superman and Henry Cavill. I think they had a very good, you know, a character and a tech guy. But the problem is, without getting into it, because I don't really do the hot button issue stuff, um, a lot of hot button issues that people do not want to hear about or want in their movies leak into their movies. Now, that could be because they are giving them the room to do that. But one thing I notice about Marvel versus the whole DC standpoint is the fact that Marvel pushes characters that stay around for years. You know, like when you look at some characters change, like Spider Man and things like that. But the reason why Doom will be successful is because we've grown to love Robert Downey Jr. as a superhero. We've grown to love Captain America. We've grown to love Black Panther, regardless of the people that's playing them. Now, if you wanted to tell me, okay, there's a new Blade movie coming, even if they start fresh again, it should have started with Wesley Snipes. It should have been, hey, we made a mistake. Because let's be real, don't get me wrong. And I don't, say that anything, like I said, doing the whole hot button issue or not, I'm not going to say what's right or wrong in that standpoint. But Wesley Snipes didn't go to jail for killing somebody or some drugs or anything against a woman. He went to jail for financial stuff. There is more people nowadays that are doing way, way, and in jail or not, for way worse things against kids, against women, against just crime itself. To penalize a man like that and say, we are going to move an entire franchise that you built, because there's literally, I'm not going to say he built Blade outright because Blade did exist in the comic book world. And yes, I grew up a comic book kid too, knowing the knowledge that comes with it, knowing that Blade was a very great character. But as far as the movies go, he made Blade into what it is. So when they cast this new guy, I kind of forget his name right now. In a way, I felt like I wasn't going to make it. Mainly because if you're not going to go Wesley Snipes, I mean, don't get me wrong. From what I know, Wesley Snipes knows a lot of like martial arts. From what I know, right? And I feel that it wouldn't have been that hard. Hey, you're not Wesley Snipes now. You're not Blade from back in the day. You're the Blade now. We got new graphics. We got new cinematics. We got new setups. When you look at the graphics and what is possible today versus what was possible when the first Blade came out, it was a mistake. Marvel fumbled the ball, and in my eyes, I feel as though Xbox fumbled the ball by basically, it's like they were 2 yards. It's like, if you've ever seen it, it's like with a wide receiver when they're dancing towards the end zone. but they drop the ball right before they enter the end zone, and it's, the referee comes out. The ball was dropped. We need to look at this, John. The ball was dropped right before he entered the end zone. That's considered a fumble. The team takes over at the one, right? And everything gets wiped out. I feel like that's where we are with Blade. Whereas like if you compare it to where PlayStation is, like they're just steaming along. You got, I mean, which I'm thankful for because having a Spider-Man tattoo, big fan of Spider-Man. Now my favorite Spider-Man is the black suit Spider-Man, the Venom Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man 1 and 2 are available on Steam. Now, I know God of War is, but that's not really what I'm worried about. Eventually I will own those games, right? And there's the reason why I bring this up is because the gaming industry has gotten to a point where it has more choices, more options, more storefronts than it ever has before. Okay. Um, yes, for me, it's evolved so much where I really feel like I'm not going to say a movie by itself changed my life, but it changed how I viewed gaming. You know, like when I saw Ready Player One, I looked at it like, okay, we there. We here. You know how they say, my man Martin used to say, we here, we locked in. Because it's like you see what we want. And let's be real, that's what movies and TV do. A lot of people don't understand that certain things were created long before they were given to us. Like I'll give you a prime example, right? I'll give you a prime example. Do you really think that tablets were created recently? First of all, let me tell you something. In 1970s Star Trek, if you look close, they're using tablets. Okay? And this ain't no like conspiracy where, piecing the puzzle. It's right there. Same thing with the watch that I wear on my wrist that all of you may have, whether it's Apple or Android or whatever. Last time I checked, Knight Rider was talking into them things, calling Dick Tracy. Come in, Tracy. Calling Dick Tracy, calling Dick Tracy, come in, Tracy. Kid, bring the car around. This is stuff that we used to look at in the early 90s, early 80s, like Lord willing, I get to see it. And now it's an everyday thing. So when you look at Ready Player One, when it came out, I feel like it was a test sample. I feel like it was a way for them to see whether or not people would agree to it or whether they would oppose it. And once they realized, like, well, damn, so many people love the idea of glasses that display certain things, we're going to do it. Now, if you think back, Google tried this years ago. There was maybe like 12 years ago or something. I know maybe more than like at least 10 years ago. There was, Google Glasses. The world wasn't ready. It wasn't ready to embrace that. But now you have Meta, you have XBXs, you have XReal, you have other companies, you got the Apple glasses about to come out. It then got to a point now where they even affordable. I'm like, damn. Because sometimes I point things out to my wife. We look up and because she has a good couple of pairs of Metas, and I'm looking into things like the XBXs and things, and you realize that some people took the very, very high route. Excuse me. Some people took the very, very high route of like, $3,000, $4,000, right? And then you got Meta that realizes I'm gonna take the $400 route, you know, and then same thing with X Real, right? X Real offers a very, very expensive version of glasses, but they also made the XBX 801s, which is only 300. And to somebody like me, it is neck and neck with a memory card, neck and neck, because you can delete a game and reinstall it or install a different game, but you can't get those glasses without getting them. And I know that, to be completely honest, once those glasses, if I get them, Lord willing, are in my possession, that is going to change my outcome on how I feel about next generation. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. So yeah, the thing about it is augmented reality, which is still new to the world, which I don't think is new to the world, just new to the civilian world. Um, it has really changed how you go about things. Um, in a way, 8K is, I don't want to say it's not coming, but I don't feel like it's coming right now, right? Like the average TV that does 4K, you can get like a what, 30, 35 inch that does 4K for $300. I don't think anybody is going to say, okay, the next Xbox or the next PlayStation, 8K gaming. So I'm going to go out and spend $1,000 on a console and $2,500 on a TV, bringing the total to almost $4,000 worth of tech. I don't think people are going to do that. To me, um, and not just, and when I say to me, that's me giving my opinion, but best believe that's backed by my interactions that I see on X. Shout out to the almost 3,000 there. That's due to the interactions I see on YouTube. Shout out to the 5,000 there. The interactions that I see on TikTok. Shout out to the over 5,000 there. The interactions to the website. Shout out to the thousands of people that visit the website. Um, it shows me that we are all starting to pick our categories. Um, when it comes to tech, okay, like take Xbox Helix for instance, right? Keeping it current. Um, Xbox Helix will be a powerhouse. Okay, it will do graphics that you've never seen before. It will, I'm pretty sure they're gonna have new buzzwords. Frames per gigahertz and kilowatts and all sorts of stuff. But for somebody like myself, that Lord, thankful was able to pick up a Xbox handheld, it changed the way I saw Xbox. I think that the whole this is an Xbox is a bad thing, I think is a wrong thought. I think that's great. I think that being able to carry an entire Xbox console with you at all times has shifted the market. I think that, PlayStation wanting to get involved is just smart. They did have a foothold in that when they had the PSP. I think Nintendo started something that Xbox and PlayStation took over. Um, don't get me wrong. When I say this, I've heard the terminology that Nintendo. I grew up with Nintendo. Nintendo didn't grow up with me, and that can be seen somewhat. I think that one of the reasons that made me back away from the Switch was the fact that, in a way, um, the same games kept coming out. A new Mario, a new Zelda, a new Mario, a new Mario, a new Zelda. And you gotta understand, for somebody like myself that's grown up with Mario, it gets to a point where you're like, hey, I want something different. I want to be in an aspect where I want a new story. Like, prime example, I am currently watching. Shout out to this content creator. I'm not gonna mention her name because I won't put anybody on the spot or anything like that. But I'm currently watching her play Skyrim, and I have been more into Skyrim lately when I'm not playing Madden and other games, Assassin's Creed, because of the fact that Game of Thrones is back. And I think that myself personally, to speak on the gaming industry, the gaming industry is now more connected to TV and movies than a little bit. Some of the best games we're getting have TV and movie attachments. When you look at Fallout, the TV show, when you look at Halo, the TV show, when you look at Wolverine, the movies coming out, when you look at Spider Man, the movies that are coming out. Even today, they announced the new Hogwarts 2 is coming out. I haven't even finished Hogwarts 1, and I'm like, okay, gotta make some space. It's kind of like one of those things where, like, tonight, I'm probably not going to get rid of the Division 2. I mean, not the Division, excuse me. I'm probably not going to get rid of Ghost Recon Wildlands because they did add new story into it. And to be honest, after having so many hours in the Division, like I think I have like 145 hours in the Division 2. But I know I have about almost 80 hours in Ghost Recon Wildlands. And after playing both franchises, I think they're two separate games, which is, of course, true, but they're two separate games. And Ghost Recon Wildlands, excuse me, what makes Ghost Recon Wildlands stand out to me is the NPCs. I think they're some of the most smartest NPC characters that have your back that I've ever seen. Okay. There is a mechanic in Ghost Recon Wildlands where you can identify four targets and you can choose between one or four, and your rest of your teammates will take up arms at the other ones. And you can say fire and pull the trigger, chop down one guy while the other three drop the other three. Now, you don't see that in a lot of games because sometimes they go the live service route, sometimes they go the solo character route, but I think NPCs are very underutilized when it comes to gaming. And that's what makes, in my eyes, Ubisoft, for me, some of my favorite franchises that make video games, like the studios behind them, would be, if I had to name, to keep it light, if I had to name a couple, I would say Ubisoft, Bethesda, Microsoft Studios, because they do make good games. But I would say Ubisoft, um, Bethesda, EA, and studios like that. And the reason why I say that is because they deliver multiple bangers. Okay, when you look at EA, Anthem was a great game. I am so upset that they have decided to not announce a new Anthem 2. Okay. But at the same time, when you look at the bangers that they have given us in Titanfall 1 and 2, Anthem, Madden. It's like these guys know how to make good games, right? When you look at Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, The Crew Motorfest. When you look at Bethesda, Fallout, Skyrim. What else am I missing here? Fallout, Skyrim. Hell, that's enough, you know. But Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Online, like not only can these guys make solo, non-live service games, but they can also make good live service games too. And I think, to be honest, what that does is it makes the game industry better. You have never really caught me, not saying caught like I do it secretly or anything, but you've never really heard me say, well, this platform sucks because I don't play it. You've always heard me explain maybe this game didn't stick out to me, or maybe I'm playing a better game. Like take I think it's called Ghost of Tsushima. Assassin's Creed Shadows beats that into the ground. Okay, just beats it into the ground in my opinion. And Assassin's Creed is not owned by Ubisoft. I mean, excuse me, not Ubisoft. It's not owned by Xbox, right? Now, where they missed out was on something like, say, Rise Son of Rome. I know that Rise Son of Rome to some wasn't a great game, but I think a lot of people looking back on it now realize that number one, it was ahead of its time. And number two, it was so good that we would all want a second one. Now, when I mentioned Hogwarts Legacy 2, why you would ask yourself, well, why are they announcing a Hogwarts 2? Right? Number one, it's because Hogwarts 1 sold very well. Okay. And number two, Harry Potter is due. I shouldn't say Harry Potter, but Yeah, basically, the Harry Potter universe is supposed to be getting a Netflix TV show. Now, if you notice, if you're around that time when I was a kid growing up, TV shows came out and then games came out first on the TV show. Whereas now games come out and then TV shows are based around the game. Now, when you get the new Hogwarts Legacy TV show and Harry Potter has a Netflix show where you're watching, because that's what all shows on streaming services do. They give you, they call it binging, binge watching on Netflix, and a lot of services do that. They give you about 10 or 12 episodes and then they go missing for 2 or 3 years, right? When Game of Thrones theme song came on, I'm talking about the dun, 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 dun. First thing I thought of was Skyrim. First thing. Because it's excuse me, it's the perfect mix of dragons, magic, swords and shields, cold hard steel. Right? Dragons, magic, betrayal, exploration, not knowing what's gonna happen next. This is why it was a great move, and it's not to, how the kids say, glaze anybody. It's to understand that this was probably one of the smartest moves they could have ever did by forming a team with Bethesda, and bringing them under their umbrella. Because could you imagine? I would be pissed if Starfield was a PlayStation exclusive. I would be pissed if the new Elder Scrolls was a PlayStation exclusive. That's why I can understand, some fellow gamers that are PlayStation gamers wanting it to be multi-platform, and we don't know. Let's be real. We really don't know what Asha has planned. We don't know what Matt Moody. We don't know what Garrett Greenberg and so on and so forth. We don't know what these executives are going to do. They may choose to say, "Hey, the next Elder Scrolls is exclusive to Xbox, and you gotta buy an Xbox." There's nothing wrong with that, because if you want to be technical about it, excuse me, if you want to be technical about it, Spider-Man was exclusive to Xbox twice. I mean, to PlayStation twice. 3 times really. You got Spider-Man One, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Spider-Man Two, from what I know. So you have at least 3 games that came out from a publicly traded character that was exclusive to PlayStation. So can you get mad if they were to say, well, you know what, in response to that, the next Elder Scrolls is exclusive to Xbox? Keep in mind, they haven't even, when Asha said that she wants to explore in the TV and movies, I think that you could be looking at the reason why, not saying that's like I know or anything, but one of the reasons why an Elder Scrolls maybe, let's say, not to say slowing down, but being delayed could be the announcement that they're coming out with a TV show. I think Elder Scrolls would make an amazing TV show. And the reason why I say that is because what, in my opinion, holds back Game of Thrones is the creator of Game of Thrones, the guy that writes the books. And I think that Game of Thrones is a great TV show. When it comes out, we love it, but it takes too long in between the season and the next season. And I think with something like a Skyrim TV show, I think that, hold on one second. I think with something like a Fallout TV, I mean, a Skyrim TV show, I think you would be in a type of standpoint where you would have so much freedom. I think that you would have the type of thing where you could easily say, hey, you know, we're going to go ahead and, make a TV show, 8 or 12 episodes. It's coming out in the next couple of years, right? Skyrim ain't coming out this year. To be honest, it doesn't feel that way. Feels like a launch exclusive for Helix, right? Now, this also brings into the question of how do you want to experience your games? Myself personally, I'm not gonna keep you here forever. I'm not gonna go on and on and on and on just to go on and on. I'm gonna make key points so that way we can look back on it like, hey, I said this at this time. And myself personally, I love late night gaming on my handheld. One of the favorite things I like doing is playing my handheld while listening to the news, whether that be fellow content creators on YouTube, whether that be fellow content creators on Twitch. I love being in the world of a game, but hearing about the world of gaming. And that's, what led me to say, hey, I'm going to create the Green Load Screen podcast because I feel as though that A, Xbox does not get the justice it should get from people that play the games. I think there's a lot of people that use the Xbox name as a way to punch down an Xbox or to say they're not good. And when you think about some of the titles that are under the umbrella, just think about that for a minute. You know, you're talking about the new Elder Scrolls, the new Fallout, the new Halo, the new Forza, the new Gears E Day. We don't know what's coming from Halo, but just those 4 or 5 games I've named are big title AAA console movers. So I think they're trying to, not to say figure out the best way forward, but in a way, yeah, figure out like, hey, is this something we want to do? Do we feel as though that this is the right idea to make these things exclusive to Xbox? And if they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. For myself, when I look at, let's say the gaming industry as a whole now, I do see a lot of titles that are living off of past glory, right? And it's understandable. You made a good game a long time ago, and basically people are excited based upon what they think is going to happen, not what they know is going to happen, but what they think is going to happen. Prime example to address the elephant in the room. When you look at Grand Theft Auto, right? Grand Theft Auto is essentially the elephant in the room. I think that a lot of people, which was smart, they moved their game out of the release window of they moved their game out of the release window of Grand Theft Auto because not because it was this amazing change the world game, but because they knew a lot of people would flock to it because of the name. When you really look at it, not even to say just the games I like, I'm pretty sure I would argue that the world, no matter how big it is and no matter how like expansive it is still small compared to what we get from other games. Like I grew up watching, the crime ball stories and not only the crime ball stories, but I grew up watching, the crime ball stories and the crime stories and different nationalities, street game and stuff like that. And I do feel as though that something like Grand Theft Auto should have been fully customizable. I think that even if you did want to put a element of a woman and a man in it, I think it should have been, hey, you create this woman, you create this guy, you play out the story, we'll see you for the um, we'll see you for the Grand Theft Auto Online later, right? But the impression I get from the story is that it's going to be Bonnie and Clyde. You know, it's going to be, hey, we rob a bunch of stuff, we take on the law, and then in the end, we're either dead or we're super rich. And to be honest, for that game to be in development, 10 plus years, and for your selling point to be, well, if you want to customize your car, you know, and you want to change your hair and you want to buy some jewelry, you have to buy the $100 edition. I have yet to order Grand Theft Auto, and it's not like some statement or trying to check a box or trying to put it on people, but it's basically to say it's because it doesn't feel new. It feels very, excuse me, not saying I won't get it. I'm not willing to say, hey, you know, I'm not ordering this thing, but I do think that I'm going to be watching that Netflix trailer with very sharp eyes. And the reason why I'm going to be watching it that way is mainly because of the fact that I am unsure whether or not I want to order that game. You know, same thing with something like Call of Duty, right? Call of Duty feels like the type of game to me that I'm going to love the story. I think it's going to be a great story. And it also has a very good multiplayer. So a game like that, if I was to pay for the $100 edition of that game, I would not only have this amazing Red Dawn story, right? I would also have this multiplayer that I can jump into a match anywhere I am with my Xbox, right? Even if I get the augmented reality glasses. That means now I can come down to the part of the house where my wife is, slap on the augmented reality glasses, and get match after match or experience the story. You know, with Grand Theft Auto, I feel like in a way I'm gonna have to be sold. Whereas Call of Duty sold itself to me, and I'm cool with it. But I feel that with Grand Theft Auto, I'm hesitant because speaking as a content creator, sometimes it's not that you want to be different, but I know myself, I try not to be the same as everybody else. And one of the things that I feel that people are the same with is when you buy a game and there's no difference. You know, we all know that there's possibly a Grand Theft Auto Online coming at some point, but what has to be taken into consideration is, do you really think that's going to be free? Like, do you think they're going to bring out, excuse me, I'm gonna let you go here eventually. It's getting kind of late. Um, do you think they're gonna bring out an over 10-year game making that made billions of dollars when it came out and all the way up to this point and give you online for free? I don't. And I think that the gaming industry has evolved. That's where I started at to bring it back around to it. It's evolved. You have handhelds now. You have people that have grown up. Like, I see them all the time. Kids, younger adults. Now there is kind of different kind of kids. I don't have kids myself. Just speaking on how I see them, teenagers and stuff. They don't play those sorts of family friendly games. Without bringing any family members into it, they play things like Resident Evil, Elden Ring, UFC, Madden, Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption. They're into the same Hall of Fame AAA games as we are. So I think that as Xbox as a brand is making good moves. But I feel like the gaming industry, when people go, it it's not a normal, no more a affordable hobby. It never was. You had to, if you wanted to keep up with the gaming industry, you had to move some things around. Now, I don't know everybody's finances. I don't know how they go about it, but some people refuse to say, I'm going to put 100 on this game. It depends on what you're getting. I put out about, what, about 140, 150 on MVP edition. I was playing Madden. Today is the 13th. I've been playing Madden for the past 7 or 8 days now. No, excuse me. I've been playing Madden for about the past 7 days or so, 6, 7 days or so. Now, did I do that to say, "Ha ha, I didn't, I beat you to it"? No, I did it because, in all honesty, it's a very great franchise that I love playing. But at the same time, I'm starting to feel the same way about Skyrim. I'm starting to feel the same way about Fallout. When I look at the games that I could be playing compared to what I am going to be playing from Grand Theft Auto, I'm like, yeah, that trailer gonna have to be shit. You know, that trailer gonna have to be something that is just, I cannot believe what you can do in this game. It cannot be, hey, let's go on over to the car shop and I'm gonna upgrade my car. Then I'm gonna go to the jewelry store and then we're gonna run a mission because I get that from every game at this point. You know, so I just want to take a little bit of time to kind of touch down on different things. You know about what has made the gaming industry what it is. Let me say this to understand the positive point of this. Okay, I do think I do think that the gaming industry is in a positive world right now. I do believe that it's a great time to be a gamer. Okay, you have handhelds that are powerful, you have consoles that are super powerful, you have augmented reality, you have virtual reality, and at the same time, you also have services that show you games 24/7. Like this woman that I'm watching play Skyrim, it is almost 1 o'clock in the morning over here in the greater Northwest, and she is getting it live. You know, just I've seen her slay 4 or 5 people just in the past 5 minutes of Skyrim. That makes me say I want to play Skyrim. You know, because this is what Cold Hard Steel, Dragons, Magic, Game of Thrones story. This is what it is. You know, nothing touches that. There's no game out there that touches Skyrim. You know, there's no game, in my opinion, to put this out there. Same thing with the No Man's Sky Starfield conversation. If you have played, excuse me, if you have played Starfield, you're not playing. Most people are not playing No Man's Sky. To land somewhere and ask me to scan a plant and then go somewhere else and do the same thing is pointless. With Starfield, when you land somewhere, you're either involved in a mission, you're exploring, or you're in a standpoint where you just want to see what the planet's about. But it's not just land, scan a planet, take off. Now that's no jab at the franchise behind what's the name of it there? Behind No Man's Sky, but I do feel as though Starfield did it better. Same thing with the whole Assassin's Creed standpoint. Before I get out of here, just telling you that Shadows and Egypt, excuse me, Shadows and Origins are my favorite Assassin's Creed, and it's not because once again the color of his skin or gender. It's because of the story that's being told. You know, with Assassin's Creed Origin, you have the story of Egypt. You know, and also a very civilized version of it as well. You also have in Shadows, you have Japan, if I'm not mistaken, is the setting there. But you also have a 6 foot tall assassin who doesn't climb the rooftop and run alongside the shadows. He kicks the door in, you know, and he beats you to death, you know. And if he can't get it done, he calls up his teammate who's 5 foot something and can sneak in the shadows and take you out. So that's what I mean about like how far the gaming industry has come and stuff, you know, as a whole and what they've graduated into. Because I've seen that graduation. I've seen them go from a green screen Game Boy with 6 controllers to, you know, I mean, 6 controllers, excuse me, 4 or 6 batteries to a full fledged movie when you play these games, you know? And it's the same thing with sports games. Sports games are more an RPG now than they have ever been. Like if you have not played Madden 27, then you might not understand what I'm saying. But if you do get a chance and you check out Madden 27 and you check out franchise, you will come to understand it is no longer just. I saw a tweet when I was on break just now where somebody said Madden is forcing us to play football, real football, for the first time in years. A lot of people may have felt like it was easy to get ahead. It ain't like that no more. You have players that will say, I want to be traded. I don't want to play into my contract. I want more money. If you don't give it to me, I'm leaving. And that's the aspect of sports that wasn't there when I was a kid. When I was a kid, you turned on the system, you played with the team you picked, the compute, you pick a team for the computer, and you run the game. Whereas now you're in a situation where basically you can play with hundreds of people around the world all day. You can also, at the same time, you can also um, fully manage a team. You could be a character and just join a team. There's so many different things you can do. So this will not be the forever last episode of the Load Screen podcast. I just wanted to at least do an episode so that way, like I said, with my dentist appointments coming up, if I'm not able to continue, because I'll stream, just because I want to play the game and stuff, but if I get to a point where I'm not, due to maybe costs or something like that, I'm not able to fully talk the same way, I wanted to put something out there. So I feel as though I've accomplished that. And I want you to have a good rest of your night. Stay blessed, stay safe, and remember, this is the SR51 Media Empire, where you never know what is behind the next load screen. Peace.